You always were.
No way!
Virginia's death marks the end of her era. Within the dam, a community is taking shape. They raised poultry, researched vegetable cultivation, and due to the increasing population, people like Dwight, Wes, and others were actively involved in constructing houses. Everything seemed to be progressing in a positive direction, a semblance of stability in this post-apocalyptic world. Just what people needed. Daniel, too, saw hope in this place. He actively helped manage the community, caring for Grace even more diligently due to the loss of his wife and daughter. Seeing the pregnant Grace is like seeing the sight of his wife when she was pregnant with his daughter. Until one day Charlie and Daniel, who were on duty, discovered the situation, and the armored car drove here again. Sherry and her group had just disembarked from the vehicle and coincidentally met Sarah, who had been out searching for Naomi. They exchanged pleasantries and Victor arrived just in time. The three factions were reunited once more, but this time it was due to a common concern: the unknown enemy. Victor signaled his men to open a bag, revealing spray paint cans. The same group that had attacked the oil fields and used spray paint as their signature had become active again. In recent times, they had attacked several locations under Victor's control, including the former base of Sherry's team. At this moment, Morgan emerged, and Sarah informed him that Naomi didn't want to return for the time being. The three factions had gathered under Morgan's invitation. The hidden threat was formidable, and unity was the only way to confront it. Morgan invited them to come to the dam. Sherry and Victor nodded in agreement. Even though they didn't speak, there was no safer place than Morgan's dam. Morgan reiterated the one principle they must adhere to when coming here: the peace treaty he had proposed. Anyone who violated it was not welcome. Their first task upon arriving at the dam was to surrender their weapons, a measure taken for the safety of those inside. Only Daniel and Morgan managed the weapons. However, a new issue arose. Grace's condition seemed worrisome. With no doctor available and Naomi absent, they couldn't be certain if it was a sign of her going into labor. They needed a fetal heart monitor, and Morgan knew where to find one. Consequently, he and Jacob set out in an armored vehicle to locate the equipment. Daily management within the dam now rested on Daniel's shoulders. It's worth mentioning that Dakota was reluctantly accepted into their group, primarily because she was just a child and also because she happened to be Virginia's sister. They hope she can provide some valuable information about the mysterious group they are dealing with. However, the information provided by Dakota didn't yield any substantial leads. During the meeting, everyone expressed different opinions regarding the recent events. Some doubted the veracity of Dakota's statements, leading to tensions among them. Sherry even directed suspicion toward Wes, as Virginia had previously believed he was responsible for the spray-painted message. The original team members naturally trusted Wes, but Luciana raised the possibility of an inside job, making it difficult to investigate. Daniel listened to the various arguments with a growing sense of frustration. They hadn't even started building their new community yet, and already suspicions were tearing them apart. Only Daniel is convinced that there are no traitors and that everything is just a suspicion. Just as tensions were escalating, a massive explosion rocked the building, causing everyone to hit the ground, even dislodging wooden boards from the ceiling. Rushing to the source of the explosion, Daniel explained that it was likely one of the bombs they had buried to clear the dam's entrance. It had been triggered, possibly by falling rocks from the nearby mountains. Luciana cautioned against assuming it was an accident, drawing everyone's attention to Dakota. Dakota quickly protested her innocence, claiming she had been in the meeting room when the explosion occurred. Despite Daniel's continued belief that it was an accident and the need to work together to build their new community, most of the group began to suspect an insider was responsible for the incident. Only Daniel remained steadfast in his belief that it was an accident and that they should focus on building rather than suspicion. However, due to the explosion's loud noise, it attracted a horde of zombies to the dam's entrance. Sherry shouted for Daniel to open the armory doors, but he remained hesitant to release the weapons. Instead, Daniel believed they could hold off the zombies by sealing the breach. Morgan will be back soon with the armored car. The wall will hold. Even though Daniel said so, he still secretly opened the armory and prepared to take out some weapons just in case. When it comes to dealing with zombies, there is no room for complacency. It was only when Daniel opened the armory that he realized the explosion might not have been an accident after all. All the firearms had been stolen, indicating that someone had intentionally trapped them inside and lured zombies to their location. They had underestimated the number of zombies drawn by the explosion, and their situation grew dire as internal suspicions mixed with the external zombie threat. In the midst of this crisis, Daniel made it a priority to ensure the safety of Charlie and Grace. the two individuals he cared about most in this place. He directed them to temporarily leave through a smaller path leading to a secure fishing cabin nearby. He provided them with a map, and in Charlie's bag, some essentials and a first aid kit. After Charlie and Grace had left, the zombies had already gathered at the perimeter fence. Some had even made their way into the passage and reached the meeting room. The few individuals inside were puzzled as to how the zombies had breached their defenses. Considering they had 2 lines of defense at the entrance, they do not have time to think too much. To solve the zombies is the first problem. Luciana, lacking any weapons, resorted to hurling a nearby gas canister at the zombies, but it proved ineffective in causing any harm. Wes used a long rod to dispatch one of the zombies, while Dwight, wielding a saw, managed to strike a zombie in the face. Dwight was tackled by the zombie because of the softness of the saw. Sarah was struggling with the zombies with a chair, but Raleigh came and kicked the zombie to death. Dwight, still struggling, soon had another zombie closing in on him. Everyone was perplexed because all the firearms had supposedly been stolen. It was Victor who fired the shot. Daniel said behind Victor, "It's you! I put the zombies in here on purpose to find out who stole the guns." Victor was quickly detained, and Daniel demanded to know who had given Victor something in return and where the remaining weapons were hidden. Victor claimed ignorance, saying he didn't know who they were and that he had simply brought in a gun in violation of the rules. He argued that not bringing them might have resulted in the deaths of those outside, but in Daniel's mind, it was Victor who did it. He was a liar and a double dealer. Just then, shouts were heard from outside, signaling that the zombies had breached the first defensive barrier and were approaching the passageway. Fortunately, there was a second line of defense within the passageway. However, if the zombies from behind continued to accumulate, this door would soon become overwhelmed. The outside zombie threat remained unresolved. An internal discord began to brew. Sherry says Dwight knows you, but I don't. Maybe this is just a trick to keep us here. As the number of zombies increased, Daniel realized that finding the weapons was imperative. The only breakthrough point seemed to be Victor. Daniel said sternly, "No more shenanigans. Victor, where are the weapons? Otherwise, I'll put a bullet in your face, just like you did to me back then. You have no idea the pain you inflicted upon me." He then placed his fingers into his own mouth and retrieved a porcelain fragment. His right cheek and jaw were missing entirely, a result of the injury Victor had inflicted on him. Daniel continued, "Even sipping water makes my face convulse. I'll have to drink soup for the rest of my life. I'll never forget who did this to me. Now, tell me, where are the weapons?" Victor finally grasped the magnitude of the harm he had inflicted on Daniel. He begged for forgiveness, pleading with Daniel to forgive him. Daniel was at the end of his tether, and just as he was about to pull the trigger, he was interrupted by a hail of gunfire from outside the door. He rushed out to investigate, finding a scene of carnage with bodies strewn about and thick smoke obscuring the area. Once the smoke cleared, Morgan and Jacob returned, having used their armored vehicle to mow down the zombies at the entrance. With Morgan's return, it seemed that leadership was back on track. After the zombies are out of the way, Morgan goes to the fishing lodge to pick up Grace. Daniel mobilized everyone to search for the missing weapons and then returned to the area where Victor was held captive. Victor, too, wanted the weapons to be found quickly to clear his name. At that moment, Morgan contacted Daniel through the radio, reporting that he was at the fishing cabin but couldn't find Grace and Charlie there. Daniel was also perplexed because, logically, they should have already reached the cabin. If anything happened to Grace and Charlie, Daniel would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Soon, Daniel joined the search in the woods. Morgan said no one had been in the cabin for months, and Grace and Charlie were nowhere to be found. Luckily, Grace's voice came out of the walkie-talkie. Morgan and the others soon found Grace and Charlie. Sarah began examining Grace, while Daniel expressed his confusion about their destination. Daniel said, "I told you to go to the fishing lodge. Why did you come here?" Grace was puzzled. "What cabin? What are you talking about?" Daniel went on to say that the cabin was in the woods and that I had marked it for you. Morgan looked at Daniel in confusion. Grace was puzzled and said, "You told us to stay away from the cabin because you said it wasn't safe. You instructed us to go to a cave." Daniel was even more confused. He told them to go to the cabin. How could it be a cave? She even showed Daniel the map, which indeed indicated a cave as their destination. Charlie also confirmed that Daniel had directed them to the cave, and she produced the map, which clearly showed the cave marked as the destination. Everyone was puzzled. Could it be that Daniel was old and remembered it wrong? Luciana contacted Morgan, revealing that they had found the missing weapons. She didn't disclose their location but instructed Morgan to return to the community to investigate further. Surprisingly, the the weapons were discovered inside Daniel's house, and he claimed to have no knowledge of how they got there. Daniel suspected foul play and suggested that someone was framing him. However, considering the Grace incident, it seemed more than coincidental. Morgan asked Daniel how he was feeling, concerned for his mental state. Daniel couldn't remember these actions, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that he had done them. For a time after his wife's death, he had hallucinations. Naomi, who had been informed of the situation, arrived to conduct a series of psychological tests on Daniel. Fortunately, the tests indicated that Daniel did not suffer from a mental illness. Naomi believed that Daniel might have developed a psychological condition due to the constant stress and instability of the post-apocalyptic world. He had been on high alert, always worried about potential problems, and now that he was in a relatively stable environment, his mind might be struggling to adapt. After all, Naomi is not a professional. She needs to check the books to understand the treatment method. After Daniel's episode, Victor and Sherry realized that staying in their current location might not be as safe as they had thought. Just as they were preparing to leave, Dakota offered her assistance, saying, "Maybe I can help." She explained that she had been reflecting on how Virginia dealt with the mysterious group. Virginia had sent her people to search for these mysterious individuals and, from the oil field, they had headed south for 2 days to reach a small town. Dwight says the town's name is Dallas, the same plague building he and Althea went to. Morgan suggested that they start their investigation there. Luciana volunteered to help, saying that Althea and Alicia should be on their way back. She and Wes could find them and join forces for the investigation. Morgan agreed to this plan, as they were the 4 youngest and most experienced members. Afterward, Daniel prepared to leave. Leading his horse, Charlie followed him, and Daniel explained, "I have to leave. It's not safe for me to stay here." Morgan stepped out of the door at this time as well and reassured Daniel, "After today, no one will do anything to you." Daniel clarified that he wasn't worried about himself but about everyone else. He confessed to having let the zombies in. If Morgan hadn't returned, he might have killed Victor and put Grace and Charlie in danger. Daniel was filled with guilt, choking up as he spoke. This elderly man only wanted to contribute to the community and build a better place for everyone. At the moment he felt so guilty that he was afraid he'd stay and do something to endanger everyone. The last time he faced a similar situation, he had burned down the estate. Charlie asked Daniel where he was planning to go, and he replied, "I'll return to that warehouse. If it's no longer there, I'll find another place." As they were about to leave, Victor unexpectedly invited Daniel to go with him. This puzzled Daniel, considering he had nearly killed Victor. Victor explained that his offer was not for Daniel, but for his daughter. She wished for Daniel to live a peaceful and stable life. Daniel accepts Victor's invitation to say goodbye to Morgan and Charlie.